There's a place where old feed mills stand silent and church bells await Sunday morning services. A place where gently rolling hills are home to cattle farms and where neighbors still talk over fences. Deep in this valley are echoes of a time long past and a place where a once thriving industry provided a meeting place, commerce, and food for the fledgling community it served.
We're on the banks of Montauk Creek right here in Cooper County, Missouri. Hi, I'm Jim Viebrock. This is Dick's Mill. Let's take a look around.
Dick's Mill is currently not operational and is scheduled to be moved soon. Let's go inside and meet my friend Bob Painter and take a look at the equipment that is being salvaged.
So the Missouri River Valley Steam Engine Association is based out of
Boonville,
Missouri.
It was started in 1964. My uncles on my mom's side were the three guys that them, and there's another 5 or 6. Eventually, there ended up being, I think, 20 original charter members. But the first year that anything was done was my uncles and a couple other guys got their steam engine just for the fun of it and decided to thresh wheat. And they were on their farm.
Right.
And the next year, people started, some more showed up. And they did it, and they said, "We need to do this, start an organization." And so then they formed the club.
Right.
And it got bigger, but and then kind of another twist, my uncle with the Steam Engine Association, Harold Holler, in the early 70s bought the gas engine out of this mill that had replaced the original steam engine. And it was a 25 horsepower Bauer, and I've got some photographs of it. But that engine my uncle had bought and had it for some years at our steam engine show. And then a gentleman in Kansas bought it, and it's been in his barn ever since. And I'd like to see if we could eventually get it back to run the mill, along with if we have a steam engine. And we've got that one needs some work and parts, but eventually I'd like to have it set up where we can show it to tourists on weekends through the year when the steam engine show is not going on. And if you did decide to run it, starting up that gas engine would be a lot easier than trying to build up steam and run it with steam engine.
Right.
So
Right.
if we could rig it up with both, that would be what I would really like to see happen.
Okay, so Dick's Mill was ran by a steam engine, but this isn't the original one. Tell me a little bit about the original one.
The original was bought salvaged from a riverboat that sank in the river at Boonville, Missouri, evidently somewhere during or shortly after the Civil War. I don't know what period. However, they shipped it by train to Tipton, Missouri, which is where I think the rail line ended. And then from Tipton, they shipped it back north on a wagon with teams. And that steam engine ran this mill then up until there's some differences in opinion. I think somewhere probably around 1905 to 1910, maybe. I'm not sure. At that time, they replaced the steam engine with a less problematic 25 horsepower Bauer gas engine that was built in Kansas City, Missouri. And that particular Bauer was evidently the only one built. The company did not remain in business long after that. So it's a fairly rare engine, and it does still exist.
Dick's Mill is scheduled to be moved to the Missouri River Valley Steam Engine Association showgrounds. Finding and categorizing the components is an important part of the process.
This piece of equipment Nancy gave me yesterday, they had it at her house. Did that go under
the shoe? That's the shoe.
And this has been rebuilt. I know this is not original.
Right. This is the hopper. This is the horse. This is the shoe. And then there would have been, this is part of it, or would have been, but there would have been another dowel rod that comes across here.
Okay.
And there would be a string on that. And the shoe hangs down, so it'll be in under here.
Okay.
Okay.
Would hang below it.
Yeah, and then there's a rod so there's, obviously this is the furniture housing and there's pieces missing from this exact piece. But there's a rod that goes down through here that has a square on it. and it rotates with it. And
Okay.
and it shakes that.
Okay.
Okay, and that's called the damsel, and it would go through right here.
Okay.
Okay, and then that string allows you to raise or lower this end of the shoe to control the flow.
Okay.
So you not only could you control the flow here, but you could control the flow into the stone
Okay.
through your shoe
Mhm.
that way. Are we assuming that the millstones sat here? I see the shaft.
Yeah.
There's a shaft coming through the wall.
Right. And some of that's original woodwork that I could tell. So yeah, the stone set right there. There's actually a curvature where that little sign is. You can see where
Okay.
it fit in there.
Yeah. So the millstones, given their weight, sit on their own foundation.
Right.
And then the building's kind of built around them. And they're twofold for that. One is to carry the tremendous weight. These stones are giant. These stones are probably going to weigh 3,000 pounds or so each. And then, so they need their own, but they vibrate.
Yeah, keep it from
And
shaking the building
shake the
apart.
building apart, right? It'll
Yeah.
walk those pegs right out of
Right.
the deal. So
Yeah.
that's what that would have been for. So
And a lot of that structure has been rotted off. Jim Martin has started rebuilding some of it, but I'm trying to figure out the pieces and put it, but get an idea how we're going to have to rebuild it.
these are big stones too. These are like 48-inch stones, maybe a little taller than that.
Right.
Maybe 52. That one over there, maybe 52. It's maybe a little taller than.
I haven't measured them.
But they would sit down in this furniture house. So the bed stone is the stationary stone, and I'm assuming we'll go look at it in a minute. That one over there is the bed stone. This one has the little horseshoe thing in it for being the running stone. So the bed stone sits down in the floor. It would have been where that concave is that you're talking about in that part. Shaft comes up through the middle, and it holds the upper stone, the running stone, in place. And the running stone sits inside this furniture housing. This is called a vat, technically. And then it turns, and you'd have been able to adjust it up or down for the coarseness that you were trying to get out of the stones. And really, that's it. I mean, they're very simple in their design and in their construction, and they're very efficient. They've got the grooves in them that has to be recut from time to time, and not as often as you would think. I used to think they'd have to recut them all the time, but some of the folks that are running these mills say it's years. Now, I don't know if you're running it every single day, all day long, if it's faster than that or not, but apparently the stones are pretty durable. And a lot of them are made of granite. A lot of them made out of limestone. Their local stones would have been a little cheaper, perhaps, than the modular ones that came from France that are granite. But the ones from France were by far more popular. Yeah, think about the journey that stone has had.
I know. I heard they used them as ballast in the ships.
Right. So think about. I mean, today we're so spoiled. Today, you pick up or get on the computer and order a millstone from Amazon, and there's a truck sitting out front the next day with it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in the 1800s, you had to hire somebody to take your money and go to France, pick out the stones, and personally bring that stone all the way back. I mean, I can't even imagine what that would cost today.
Yeah.
You hear story. What I think one of the things I love about going to all these different mills, all the different stories and folklore that you hear about them. But one of them we were at recently, the guy mentioned how they deal with the stones if somebody ever got hurt. And you can imagine getting hurt in a place like this was probably pretty common, particularly if you're trying to flip this over and dress it. He said that the superstition was that if you just got hurt using the millstone, then they would lean it up against the building outside. And if somebody got killed with the millstone, then they would put it in the ground. This stone has to weigh well in excess of 2,000 pounds.
Wow.
And think about that weight sitting right there, for 50 years. Constant pressure will bend anything.
Right.
Yeah. I sure wouldn't want this thing falling over on my toes, I can tell you that.
The granary downstairs, now, when people brought grain, I mean, that granary is pretty big, so people sometimes obviously brought a lot of grain. Did they carry it all in and dump it in through these trapdoors?
Yeah, these are called floor sinks. It depends on if the farmer had a sheller at home. If they didn't have a sheller at home, the mill would have had a sheller. They would have either, the sheller probably would have sat right over one of these holes. If they weren't done, they would have hand cranked them in and the kernels would fall down in there because all the mill needs is the kernels. The cobs then would have been sent back or sent back, to the farm to feed the hogs with or whatever. Or, the steam engine would have burned those kernel or those cobs just as easily. So, and nothing was wasted, but those kernels would be in there. They'd be elevated up to the top to a cleaner, a cleaner separator shaker, and it would get all the chaff and dust, stuff like that, out of it. And then it would make its way back to the grinder because you want clean product going into the stone mill. Right. There would have been a scale. They would have weighed, the wheat kernels.
There's 2 scales that I had taken home. I've got right now. They're just the regular ones you see at sales at any farm mill. One's a Howe, the other one's a Fairbanks. 2 platform scales. The Howe was in a little worse shape, looked like the older one. So I don't know if that was the originals that would have been in here. I forget even the patent dates on that one. It seemed like that Howe had a patent date of 1867 or 8, so maybe it is an original.
Could be.
But
well, because they would have had to weigh it because the millwright got paid either directly, or he took what they refer to as a toll.
Right.
Yeah, and the amount of material that the millwright kept was what he bagged for himself and then sold. Right. To the general store or sold directly to the other town folk, around that didn't have farms. So it worked out really, really well. This is a flour packer, and it's relatively functional at this point. It runs off a belt pulley over here that runs an auger that goes in here. This would be the hopper from the final product of the bolters upstairs. This would be where the final baggable flour would be. And they would do these in small batches because of the insects, the weevils and stuff that would get in there. And so they would do these in small batches. So you talk about some of these bins, they could actually be holding some unprocessed wheat for later use. I'm assuming they would have done it more Farmer John has 500 pounds, and when Farmer John's 500 pounds is exhausted, then he's done. Something along those lines. But there's an auger in here that moves this, that packs it into what I'm guessing is going to be a flour sack that would have been brought up to this. Right. As the sack starts to fill with the material, it's going to get heavier, and it's going to start to push down on this process. And a mill this size could do probably with a single roller, probably 15, 20 barrels a day, which is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot if you think about it. They did corn a little bit differently. Corn was done on a first come, first serve, but corn had a shelf life. So they had laws about you had to bring, the first person that was here got serviced, and everybody, you couldn't bump somebody in line because you were buddies or whatever like that. We think about this mill being so labor intensive, but really the hardest part of the whole thing is unloading the dang wagon.
Dick's Mill features several bolters on the second level. The purpose of the bolter is to separate flour as it moves through the refining process. After several runs through the system, the flour is ready to be sacked or put in a barrel so it can be offered for sale in the local general store.
I think this is a smutter, and what its purpose is to separate the wheat grain out a little bit and also remove the wheat grain that is contaminated with a mold called smut or something similar to that. And it would separate that contaminated germ out and discard it so that it wouldn't be part of what goes into the grinders, and then it cleans it up before it goes to the roller mill. So this was early food protection here. Well, I didn't talk about it downstairs because I wanted to come up here because the better illustration for the structure of the building is up here. And I'm just in awe of how cool this is. And there's a name for this, but I'm not an old barn expert. But there's a name for the style of your joist.
Far back here, that's one of the first things I noticed when I was talking about moving it. When you're back to back and you look up, it almost looks like that structure was built with the equipment, and then they built the building around it. It probably wasn't, but it just gives you that feeling, the way you look at that whole structure with all the elevators and the equipment in it.
Well, I do a little woodworking, so the mortise and tenon joinery in here, and how tight it is. I mean, this building's knocking on 200 years old, and I mean, these joints are still super tight. It looks like, when they go to disassemble this, they're just going to drive those pins out.
Yeah.
And that's all that's holding that together. It'll be kind of a bittersweet day, the day they take this apart.
Right.
But when you think about the new life it's going to have,
Right.
and the new love it's going to have, versus just sitting down here and year after year after year it deteriorating, it's going to become a showpiece, a centerpiece for your all's club, and people will be able to come in. They'll be able to step into a time capsule and see how things were done, way back when in the 1800s, early 1900s, and get an appreciation for how hard people worked,
Right.
How different life was then from today.
I was looking for more attractions at our local steam engine show. You got to keep growing and look to the future. And I thought, wow, if we could have a mill there. And I actually accepted, getting it donated to us before I even knew where we were going to put it. But then I raced back to the grounds and drove around, looked around, and found a spot I think's just perfect. So we've got a restored church here and 2 log cabins. So we can get the mill there along the road. Then if we can get the schoolhouse, have it closer to the church. I want to duplicate Dick's Mill community there on our grounds.
Mills like these are a national treasure. They remind us of a different time in our history when rural life was hard and rewarding. Some of these mills have been well cared for, and others left to the elements and to the passage of time. An effort is underway to preserve and restore this piece of history, and you can be part of it. I'm Jim Viebrock. Let's go find another mill to explore.
There's a place where old mills sit silently in valleys waiting to be rediscovered, and you know where they are. Hi, I'm Jim Viebrock. I'm the host of Millin Around. I want to know where those mills are, and you can help me by sending an email to the address on your screen that has the mill name, the contact person who either owns or supervises the mill, a couple of photographs that you've taken, and maybe a little history about the mill so that we can be in contact with them about maybe adding them to our collection of mill videos. In the meantime, enjoy the videos that we already have, and let's go find another mill to explore.